Hey everyone! So I've had a few people asking me what equipment I would recommend when they get started with bees because it's winter here in Victoria, but coming into spring is when people will start getting their new hives. So now is the time to get yourself set up with your equipment so when your bees come, you can focus on them and you're not scrambling trying to get the equipment. So by no means am I an experienced beekeeper at all. I've merely been doing this for a couple of years as a little hobby, but in that time there are definitely a few things I've done wrong and a few things I should have bought, a few things I should have bought differently. So I'm hoping by making this video you can learn from my mistakes and not make the same ones. So I'll go through my equipment piece by piece what I think a beginner beekeeper needs. Now I have plenty more beekeeping equipment than this, a lot of it to do with extracting honey, but I won't focus on that today. I will just focus on what you need to actually get your bees started, and hopefully in a few months or potentially a year and a bit, honey will be on the table, but until then you don't have to worry about the extraction equipment. You just have to worry about giving your bees the best home possible and having all the equipment to check on them and make sure they're healthy and happy.
Unsurprisingly, the first thing we need is a hive. Now, I have a few different types of hives, and this is potentially my downfall. So, the reason this is my downfall is I have 10 frame hives. So this here is a 10 frame hive, which means you get, across here, 10 frames fits in. This here is an 8 frame hive, so a little bit narrower and only fits 8 frames of honey or brood. Now the reason I say I made a mistake here is because I have both an 8 and a 10, it's really hard to interchange the boxes. So I would really recommend either having 8 frame hives or having 10 frame hives. Don't have both, because being able to swap boxes, swap bases, swap lids is really, really important and makes your life a lot easier. And when you can't do that, it's a pain in the ass, basically. So pick one or the other. My preference, I think, would be the 8 frame hive here. My brain initially was like, oh, well, 10 frames more efficient because you can fit 10 frames in. But I'll tell you what, when those frames are full of honey, like that box, each box is gonna weigh like, nearly 40 kilos. So working with a 10 frame hive, like each box on that filled, is really, really difficult. So I find an 8 frame box is just so much easier to work with. And frankly, out of all my beehives, the ones that are the happiest are in the 8 frame. So I'm not saying that the 8 frame makes happy bees, but certainly it's of no disadvantage. So I think you need an 8 frame hive. Now, secondly, you've got to choose what your hive is made from. And what you can see here is I've got a plastic hive on the left, and then I've got a wooden hive on the right. Now, all my hives out in the garden are actually wooden hives, like this one. But it's really, really wet up here in Mount Macedon, and I find the wood gets ruined like so quickly. Every winter I'm sanding and painting all my boxes again. So I bought this plastic hive thinking that that might work better, just because it won't have the maintenance issues given how wet it is. I haven't used it yet. As you can see, it's in the garage, so I'm going to set it up this spring, but that's a possibility for you to go with the plastic hive, especially if you live somewhere that's just got crazy amounts of rain. If you go the plastic hive, then once it's built, it's all good to go. But if you go the wooden hive, you have to paint it. So, So this here I've painted. You want to paint it a light colour because you want it to reflect the heat in summer. You really don't want to paint it something dark that's going to like suck the heat to it, especially like in Australia. So this grey colour is like about as dark as I would go. I would paint your hives now, like get them months before you get your bees and paint them up, because like even if you use a really natural paint, I worry about like the fumes coming off it and stuff like that. So get it painted as soon as possible so it can sit in kind of air for a couple of months before you put your bees in it. Like I would never paint this and then put bees in it a couple of days later. And you only need to paint the outside of the box. You can see the inside. This has got the frames in it, so you can't really see, but the inside's not painted. It's just the outside. And obviously the lid is painted, and the base there is painted. Which brings me to another important topic, is you want a base that separates from the boxes. Some hives, this baseboard and this top box, or the bottom box as it'll be, are actually attached, like it's one unit. I have one of those hives. It is such a pain because so often you want to swap boxes around. You might have a really dirty baseboard and you want to swap out so you can clean it. But when it's attached to the bottom box, you just can't do it. So definitely do not buy hives where the base is kind of one unit. The other thing is you've got a lid. Now, again, because of my offensive rain issues, you should never describe rain as offensive. Rain is beautiful. But because of how much rain I get, I find this gabled roof with the corners that kind of protrude out from the hive, I find that a lot better for just the rain issue. Like, and the hives I have out in the garden, the ones with the gabled roofs, I find the wood, especially along here, really maintains its integrity. But when I have flat, like flat roofs, this one I'm not worried about because it's plastic, but on my wooden ones with flat roofs, I find that water kind of collects at this corner, drops down, and the wood around here really deteriorates very fast. And actually the baseboard at that corner point, some of them I've had ruined even after one season. So I think the gabled roof is better. So that's kind of the hive choices. You've got the size of the hive, you've got the material of the hive, and then you've got the kind of design of the hive. So I'm going to try the plastic, but don't know how that's going to go. If you've got the wood painted early, keep your base and your bottom box separate. Gabled roof, 8 frames, my preference. The other thing I really recommend you get is this stand here, and you can get them in 8 frame or 10 frame, and then your beehive sits on top. Getting your beehive off the ground makes your life so much easier as a beekeeper, because as I said, the hive gets so heavy and you've got to bend down, pick up boxes, lift up frames. Having it off the ground is just going to make your experience a lot more comfortable. And I actually think it's better for the beehive because, especially in winter, you don't have all that moisture kind of like on the ground so close to the hive. So I think as far as like maintaining the integrity of the hive and keeping moisture out of it, having it off the ground really, really helps. So I didn't do that initially when I set up my hives. I did it this last season, and it was a bit of a pain because lifting them up onto the stands was really difficult. So I would definitely just set that up from the get-go. And what these stands also have is these metal bits here that you can rest frames on, because when you open up your hive, you'll usually take out one frame immediately, and you need to leave it out of the hive so you can actually like really inspect, otherwise it's like too tight in there. So having a frame holder that can sit your frame so it's not like getting on the ground, it's not dirty, it's probably going to be covered in bees, so you definitely don't want to just like dump them on the ground. It could have uncapped honey in there, so you want to keep it standing up. If you like to put it on its side or turn it upside down, you're actually going to like lose all the honey that the bees have put in that frame. So frame holder on the side, really good. Which actually brings me to the other point. You're going to need enough frames to fill your beehive. So like, as I said, this box holds 8 frames. You need 8 of these, and you also need the foundation, the wax foundation that goes in them. So look, when you start, you're only going to use one box, but hopefully your bees are really happy, really healthy with plenty of food and the right weather conditions, and they're going to multiply really fast. So I would say for every hive, you need 3 boxes. Now, you might not use all 3 boxes in the first year, but you're definitely going to in the future. So get the boxes now. And also, like, if you're checking on the bees, they're going great, and you're thinking, I need to get a box on or they're going to swarm, or I want more room for them to make honey, like, you just need to have a box available. You can't be like waiting for one to be delivered and then you got to paint it and all that shenanigans. So 3 boxes per hive is my rule, and therefore you need like enough frames to fill that. So for this size hive, you need 24 frames. For this size hive, you need 30 frames. So make sure you've got the frames and you've got the foundation. I really recommend using foundation, which is just that like waxy stuff inside the hive. Inside the frame. So yeah, definitely get more boxes. I have 2 spare boxes for this guy. And like with one of my hives, I had it at 3 boxes, you know, within a year of getting it. So it's not crazy. Definitely 3 boxes is the aim in the height of summer. Okay, so that's your hive. You got your hive, you got your frames to go in it. Now you need protective equipment. You need, and like, don't stuff around with this, right? Like, you see people on YouTube all the time who are like tending to their bees and they're not wearing any protective equipment, and like, good on them, but you're a beginner beekeeper. You need to have yourself looked after. Like, it's as simple as that, and nothing's worse than getting stung by a bee. I have never been stung by a bee when checking on my hives because I always wear the full suit. It's as simple as that. I find it very unstressful opening this up. You're going to have bees literally covering you, but because I've got my suit on, I'm like, it's cool, I'm calm. Don't attempt this stuff without a suit. So you need the full suit, and you also need a full set of gloves. Mine are now filthy. And you want these gloves that go like right up to your elbow, because you put these on over the suit and then, like, you know, there's no space for the bees to get in. So you need a full suit, you need a full set of gloves. I would say go bigger rather than smaller with the suit, because like if it's too small, it is actually easier for the bees to sting you through it. So go bigger. And the other thing is then more people can wear it. Now, the one mistake I made was I only bought 1 suit and 1 set of gloves, thinking, okay, I'm the beekeeper, I'm going to be doing all this. But what I quickly found was that, like, it's a big job checking on your hives, and especially when they're full, they are so heavy that I literally can't always do it on my own. So I don't have any friends that are beekeepers. So I bought a second suit and a second set of gloves. I just bought a really big size, and, you know, every time I need someone to help, often a different person, I just get them suited up in that suit. So, you know, I know it's a bit more of a financial outlay getting 2 suits and 2 sets of gloves, but you absolutely will need it. Like, this stuff is heavy. And then also you've got like someone to manage the smoker, someone to manage the brush. Like, you got all these tools, it's all happening. Like, having a friend there is brilliant. And as I said, like, don't let anyone near the hives that isn't properly suited up. It's just not worth it. So other things you need. Your 2 suits. This is a bee brush, and you will use this to like brush bees off a frame if you need to. I don't use it often, but I would probably recommend one. And get like something made of natural fibers for the bristles. Like, bees do not like anything that's not natural. So I think you're probably going to piss them off less if you use like a natural brush. Small hive beetle is a real problem. These traps I find work really well. Not that I've actually ever really had a small hive bee problem, but they sit like in between the frames like that in your hive, and then the small hive beetles are attracted in there. So you can check this really easily. You can empty it really easily, see if you've got a problem. They're really cheap, like they're just plastic. So get one of those from the get-go. This is a hive tool, and it's going to be your best friend. You can see how dirty mine is. You're going to use the top bit to like pry your beehive open and do different things like that, and then you're going to use this bottom bit as a hook to hook out your frames. Because what you probably won't appreciate until you've had bees is like their ability to like propolis stuff up and stick it together is out of this world. It's like super glue. So you need this super sharp tool to like really get in there, and you know, this thing is going to be your best friend. So hive tool, essential. The other thing you're going to need is like a ratchet strap. This is just from like the hardware store. The reason you need that is, like, you can see this can all just be like pulled apart, knocked over. The bees will glue it together, but until they've done that, you can't risk it. So even with this big hive, like, it needs the ratchet strap right around it. And I always have a spare ratchet strap on hand in my bee kit, because I mean, there's nothing worse than if one's like jammed up or not working, and then like you've got no way to secure your hive. That to me is very anxiety producing, especially if you live in the country. Like, you get some like, I don't know, some kangaroo that comes up and wants to scratch against it, and like a cow, and I mean the thing's going to knock over. So really make sure you've got your ratchet strap. The other thing I didn't have at the start but I bought recently is this like power pack thing. I'm probably not, what is it? AC/DC adapter. This makes life so much easier. You use these to heat up the wire on your frame and melt the foundation on. So like it's really hard to get the foundation on the frame without that little gadget. I used to go to a shop in Melbourne and use theirs, but it was a pain in the ass because you got to take the frames and everything. So if you're serious about kind of doing it at home, get one of these, because often, especially if you buy them online, even if you buy them in shops, you'll buy the frame part, but then the actual foundation is sold and sent separately. So this is the sheets of foundation. So getting that foundation to like stick onto the metal in there, like the heat source from this little doobie lacquer, is really good. The next thing you need is a smoker. That is absolutely essential. This wasn't an expensive one, and it works totally fine. So I don't know if you need to like really invest in a fancy one. Using smoke when you open your bees is like really important, really essential, makes the job so much easier. And I also find you actually don't need to hurt, not that you ever want to hurt a bee, but occasionally you do. It makes it easier to kind of get the bees to move off equipment when you need them to, and move them off the lid when you want to put the lid back on, and that kind of thing. So you definitely need a smoker. And I find Hessian sacks to be like the absolute best thing to keeping the smoker alive for a long amount of time at kind of a low heat. So I wouldn't go out and buy them. I got them from like a coffee roasters. You know, they buy their beans in big bags and then they have all the Hessian bags left over. So I just asked them for some. And then I just cut up squares and put that in the top of the smoker there. And then obviously you need some matches as well. So the last important thing I think you need, I didn't have one when I started, but I'm definitely going to start using them, is a hive mat. So this goes like on top of your top box, in between your lid and your top box, on top of the frames. And this stops like moisture dripping down in winter onto the bees. It stops them creating wild honeycomb in the roof of the hive, which can be very annoying as a beekeeper. Obviously the bees just doing what they do naturally, but you kind of want to discourage them from building that. So this is just like a piece of lino that you cut to be like just slightly smaller than the box. So obviously if you've got an 8-frame hive, that's going to be a smaller piece than a 10-frame hive. You can make them yourself, or you can buy them from a lot of beekeeping supply shops. They're just a couple of bucks, so that might be worth having as well. So I really hope this video was helpful for you guys at home. If you have any other questions about beekeeping or my equipment or anything, as I said, I'm not an expert, but you know, definitely in the short amount of time I've been doing this, I have learned a lot and made a lot of mistakes from when I was a beginner. So I'm more than happy to share. Let me know in the comments below.